The city is my palace.
I used to talk to this guy, and he told me that he couldn't work, like he collected disability for anxiety or whatever. Anyways, he asked me could he move in with me, and I asked him, what are you gonna do for work? He said, well, you can be my job. I was like, sir? He said I could take care of you like it's my job. Dog.
Yo, okay. So this guy asked me out, right? And then after he asked me out, he took me to Applebee's, which is like whatever. And then so I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with Applebee's, but like when you hear the story, you're gonna get you gonna get it. And we're going to the movies after this, right? So the waitress comes up and she asks us what we want. So he tells me, you should order blah, blah. I don't remember what it was because it was some years ago. You should order blah, blah. Also, you should order this drink. I think the drink was actually like a perfect martini or something like that. I think that's what it was called. He was like, this is a really good drink. Long story short, after having me do all that, I could have just ordered whatever. But he suggested it too. On top of asking me, I don't ask, no, he asked me out. When the waitress came back to the table to give him the ticket, he was like, oh, wait a minute, you made a mistake. This is separate. So naturally, I start doubting myself, and I'm like, am I stupid? Did I think this was a date and he was just asking me like on a friendship thing or something? I knew of him prior to this, but I didn't know him like that. So when he asked me out, I assumed date, which it was, because I asked him, I'm sorry, is this a date or is like a friendship thing? Like did I read that wrong? I'm sorry, maybe I read that wrong. And he was like, no, it is a date. I was just figured like, we pay for our own food and then I pay for the tickets and you pay for the snacks when we get to the... Okay. So when the waitress comes back this time, I already have my debit card out. And I was like, ma'am, you don't have to separate anything. Here is my debit card. Just pay for it all. I got this. It's on me. Shit, cool. I ain't never seen this movie before. As he proceeds to talk about this movie, I start gathering my things because in my head, I'm already checked out. The whole date was awkward anyways, but at that point, that was just like okay, time to go. He's still talking and gathering his stuff. I start to walk out. He's like, you're not going to wait on me? I was like, I'm going home. And he was like, why are you going home? I was like, why would you ask me on a date and you couldn't afford the date? And he was like, what, you tripping? You offered to pay for it. I literally looked at him like this and said, have a good night. When I tell you there's nothing wrong with being broke, I've been broke. But why would you ask somebody, you can't even afford Applebee's? Why would you ask somebody on a date and you can't afford it? And there's nothing wrong with going through a struggle. I've been through a struggle. Believe me, you. But why would you try to pick up a girl so she can struggle with you? Get yourself together.
Oh, this TikTok was made for me. Okay, this is the last Tinder date I went on before I deleted the app. Okay, so this guy, him and I, we match on Tinder, whatever. He's like, let's go to happy hour. I'm like, yeah. So he calls me and he's like, okay, cool, let's go to NOLA. I'm like, yes, girl. Like, I love NOLA. They have a good happy hour and it's only 12 minutes away. So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. He's like, let's meet at 4 o'clock. I'm like, sweet. So I leave my place at like 3:30 because I had to get gas. So whatever, I'm driving over there, gonna get gas. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna be late. And then he texts me at like 3:50 and he's like, something happened with AT&T. Can we push our date to 4:30? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So whatever, I get to the venue early and I was like, I'll text him at 4:20 to let him know that I got us a table in the courtyard. So I text him and I let him know at like 4:20 and he's just like, oh my gosh, you're so early. I'm like, sir, but I really am not. And he's just like, okay, I'm about to jump in the shower. Like, I live right down the street. I'll be there really quick. I'm like, sir, I'm like, okay, whatever. Gets out of the shower, sends me his location and calls me and he's like, I am so sorry how late I am. Like, punctuality is such a huge deal to me. Like, you know what? Start without me. Drinks, food, whatever you want, it's on me. I'm like, duh, like, what? I'm like, okay. So he proceeds to tell me, he's like, yeah, I had to call AT&T because they shut my phone off. I'm like, you not have auto pay? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and my QR code doesn't work. Sir, you chose this venue and you can only pay by QR code. I'm like, that's a little sus. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get this tab started because you aren't about to finesse me. So, whatever. He gets there and he's just like, oh, did you start? He's like, you probably finished your drink already, huh? I'm like, no, I waited for you. And I was like, you can only pay by QR code here. He's like, oh, but mine doesn't work. I was like, I know. So, we're going to use my phone and we're going to put your credit card on my phone. He's like, okay. And so whatever, like 2 each drinks later, I'm just like, I gotta go, like, let's close this tab out. You guys, his card gets denied on the QR code 2 times, calls the waiter down. We asked them if he could pay by, like, whatever, by him swiping his card. His credit card gets denied again, another 3 times. He's like, honestly, like, red, like, sweating bullets, like, super embarrassed. I'm just like, I should have been a good person and offered to pay, but there was way too many red flags that I was like, this guy is totally trying to finesse me. Like, let me just see him get a little spicy armpits going on. So then he had to pull out his debit card, which it went through. This guy literally tried to finesse me out of happy hour drinks. I'm like, sir, no, you chose the wrong one because I'm from the streets.
Let's talk about it, black men, because I got receipts. So this story is about a guy who I occasionally message back and forth with on Instagram. There was actually a time I was at this job that I was super depressed at, and I made a post about it, and he said something nice. So it progressed from there, and one day he responded to a post of mine wanting to go out, and he said, let's do it on me. Receipts right here. So when I finally had time, I'm like, hey, I have time this week. Let me know if you're free and when you are, and we can go do something. He's like, oh yeah, we can go out. Where do you want to go? I'm like, oh, we can go to a museum. We can go ride scooters downtown. We can go to the park. We can go out to eat. Really doesn't matter. He's like, all right, I'll meet you downtown at the museum, and then we can just go from there. Now, the first red flag was I was waiting 30 minutes for him to pull up. And my spirit told me to leave then, but I didn't. So when he finally gets there, we go in the museum and we find out that the museum only takes cash. It costs $27 per person, and I'm assuming he already looked this up because he literally pulls out $27 out of his pocket. And so here I am with my Bank of America card like, okay, I guess we can't go in. The museum's already about to close, so it's dead. So now I'm on level 2 pissed. So we go outside and I'm like, well, can we at least ride the scooters? Like, do you have any money on your card to ride the scooter? He's like, oh, how much do you think that's going to cost? So at this point, I'm like, I've already drove downtown. He has $30. I suggest going to the Mexican restaurant up the street. So we get to the Mexican restaurant and he's constantly asking me if I'm mad. And I'm like, I'm not super mad, but you continuously asking me is making me mad. And he's like, what are you upset about? I'm like, dude, you invited me out and you don't even have enough money to pay for shit. Like, it's frustrating. He's like, well, what made you think that I'm entitled to do anything for you? I'm like, again, you asked me out. He's like, well, I'm just not understanding the entitlement because I have women do things for me. I get flued out. So at this point, he's ordered a big fish taco plate and a huge margarita. So I'm like, at this point, I just want to eat my food. And speaking of the food, do you even have enough money for that? This man is like, I didn't want to come here. You suggested coming here. I'm like, bruh, so you ain't got the money? So he gets up. He's like, you know what? Just tell him to send this shit back. And here. I'm like, did he just throw this money at me in this restaurant? Now, mind you, the bill was like $60 and he barely had $30. So I had to come out of pocket for the bill. I'm thinking this man left. No, he's outside waiting for me once I pay the tab, and he's still cussing me out all the way until I leave the parking lot.
All this, you talking to me, but you made this shit clear. It was about the food and me just taking you out. I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? I was really just trying to get to know you and shit like that. It was about the food and me just taking you out. I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? I was really just trying to get to know you and shit like that. No pressure. Misunderstanding. But I understand now. You can send me your cash out and I'll shoot you your bread, whatever you feel like I owe you or you need to be compensated. Or you can just send me a request. It's the $, Slugger, F Inc. And it's gonna come with sluggers in areas. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, love, and have a blessed one. Because obviously, I guess, like I said, I ain't realized what was going on. Like you said, you brought up that message, that last message, but you ain't said nothing about all the messages that was before then. And then when he just didn't start no conversation, that was just to let you know that I understood certain things that you were going through at those times, that I see that you in a better space, and I say you don't remember that at those times. That's all I love.
So one time, this boy asked me on a date, and he basically begged me to go with him out to eat. So I just went with him out to eat, whatever, because he was cool. I knew him already, like, from previous, like, meetups or whatever. So I go out to eat with him. He picks me up. We drive to this restaurant in Harlem that he claims is one of his favorite spots or whatever. So he orders wings. I get a salad and a glass of wine. He gets like water. He doesn't even get a drink. So the date was fine. It was cool. He finishes his wings. And when the waitress comes over, he's like, oh, can we get the bill? And can you take the wings off? Because they was nasty. So now I'm looking at him like, you ate them though. Like he finished all the wings. Like there was no chicken on the bones. Like he finished them. And I just had a salad and a glass of wine. So he took his food off the bill. And when the bill came, he goes, you paying, right? Because I didn't get nothing. I'm like, what? And he like, yeah, I didn't even get nothing. So, yeah, I paid the bill. And he had the nerve to want me to go back with him, to sleep with him. I'm like, take me home. And it wasn't even his car. It was his sister's car.
Don't judge, sis be looking hella musty, but this is justice for my girl. Let's get into the story. So there's a guy named AJ, and he's an investment banker. Essentially, if you put his assets together, he's a millionaire, has a house in Australia, has one close to 1 million smack in the middle of London City, and it's only a studio apartment. And he's really well-to-do, and he has a girlfriend that's also in the banking industry. So one day they go out with another couple to the Shard on New Year's Eve, and they had drinks. At the end of it, the bill comes around. AJ's girlfriend offers to pay her share because she knows her boyfriend is hella stingy and always emphasizes 50-50. And so she says, I'll pay my share. He says, no, it's alright, I'll pay for you, because the other couple, the boyfriend pays for his girlfriend, as couples usually do. And he says, no, I'll pay for your bill. She says, no, it's okay, I'll pay for my share. He says, no, it's okay, I'll pay for your share. So she was like, okay. He keeps insisting. The next day, this bitch had the mother friggin' nerve to actually message her and say, hey, I was doing my finances and everything in his beautiful, expensive apartment, and I think that, like, you know, I'm a bit tight. Can you transfer me back that 50 pounds I paid for you? That 50 pounds! You know what? I'm not even that rich. But you know what? Like, when it comes to friends and family, if I offer to pay, then it's my stupid mouth that had to open and pay. I'll keep quiet and just cut back on something else. What is 50 pounds to a guy that's a millionaire? What is the life lesson here, ladies? It is that just because you go with a rich guy does not mean you're gonna get everything. You should just go with a guy that has an open heart, that genuinely cares for you and wants to pamper you. Because you look at these rich narcissistic dudes. So ladies, life lesson, don't go with guys like that. That's a red herring. Bye.
The city is my palace. What I'ma do? Cause I want she and she.
So we at Taco Bell, right? Everything cool, right? I go order me a blue freezy. This boy tell me,